The silence in the federal court of Los Angeles was broken by the sound of double doors opening at the back of the room. All present turned their heads simultaneously as Justin Bieber, wearing an impeccably tailored gray suit and navy blue tie, walked down the center aisle. His face, once the poster image of youthful exuberance that had captivated millions of fans worldwide, now bore the weathered look of someone who had made a difficult decision after years of internal struggle. The courtroom was packed to capacity for what had been billed as just another day in the ongoing investigation into alleged industry misconduct. Journalists frantically typed on their laptops, while sketch artists hurriedly captured the scene that no camera was allowed to record. The air conditioning hummed softly overhead, barely cutting through the tension that had been building since the proceedings began 3 weeks ago. "The court calls Justin Bieber to the stand," announced Judge Miranda Hoffman, her voice echoing through the room as it fell into a deeper silence. Bieber approached the witness stand with measured steps. His hands, slightly trembling, were visible to those in the front rows. A court officer held out a Bible. "Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? So help you God?" "I do," Bieber responded, his voice stronger than his demeanor suggested. Assistant District Attorney Elena Rodriguez approached the stand after Bieber was seated. Her reputation for methodical questioning had become legendary in legal circles. She adjusted her glasses and consulted her notes before looking directly at the witness. "Mr. Bieber, thank you for being here today. I understand this is not easy," she began, establishing a rapport that would be essential for what was to come. "I'm just here to tell my truth," Bieber replied, his microphone amplifying the slight crack in his voice. The questioning began innocuously enough, with Rodriguez establishing Bieber's history in the entertainment industry, his rise to fame as a teenager discovered on YouTube, and his subsequent navigation of the complex world of entertainment under various management teams. The gallery listened with interest, but without surprise. This was all public knowledge. "Mr. Bieber, can you tell the court about your relationship with Sean Combs, known professionally as Diddy?" Rodriguez finally asked, her tone shifting subtly. A visible change came over Bieber. He took a sip of water, the glass clinking against his teeth. "We met when I was 14 years old," he began. "I was new to the industry. Everyone told me he was someone I should know, someone who could help my career." Rodriguez nodded. "And did he?" "At the time, I thought so," Bieber said. "He invited me to parties, introduced me to people, took me under his wing, supposedly." "These parties," Rodriguez continued, "can you describe them for the court?" Bieber's attorney, Martin Greenberg, rose from his seat. "Your Honor, I'd like to confer with my client." "Briefly," Judge Hoffman allowed. The hushed conversation lasted less than a minute before Bieber nodded and his attorney returned to his seat. "The parties started normal enough," Bieber continued. "Industry people, celebrities, music, dancing. But as the night went on, things would change. People would disappear into private rooms. There was always a point where I was told certain people needed to talk business, and I'd be ushered somewhere else." The courtroom remained deathly quiet. Rodriguez pressed on. "Did there come a time when you were no longer ushered elsewhere?" Bieber closed his eyes briefly. "Yes, when I turned 16. A murmur rippled through the courtroom. Judge Hoffman tapped her gavel once, restoring order. "And what happened then, Mr. Bieber?" "That's when I was allegedly brought into what they called the real industry. That's what Diddy allegedly called it." The use of allegedly was clearly coached, but the impact of his words was no less powerful. In the back of the courtroom, a woman who had been identified earlier as Bieber's mother dabbed at her eyes with a tissue. "Can you elaborate on what the real industry meant in this context?" Rodriguez asked. "Supposedly it was about connections, about who you knew and who knew you, about proving you could be trusted with secrets," Bieber said. "There were contracts, NDAs everyone had to sign. Phones were collected at the door, and there were allegedly conversations about how careers were really made and broken." Rodriguez approached the evidence table and lifted a document. "Your Honor, I'd like to enter Exhibit 43B, a non-disclosure agreement signed by Mr. Bieber in 2010, countersigned by Sean Combs and 3 corporate entities." The document was displayed on screens throughout the courtroom. Its legal language was dense, but certain clauses were highlighted, particularly those outlining penalties for disclosure that reached into the millions of dollars. "Mr. Bieber, did you understand what you were signing at the time?" Rodriguez asked. "No. I was told it was standard industry practice. Everyone signed them. It was presented as a formality. Bieber replied, "I was a kid. I just wanted to make music." The questioning continued for nearly an hour, establishing a timeline of events that painted a picture of a young artist gradually exposed to allegedly more troubling aspects of the entertainment world. Bieber described late-night meetings, supposedly strange rituals disguised as team building, and a culture of silence enforced through both legal threats and vague warnings about careers that had been destroyed when people talked too much. Then came the moment that sent shockwaves through the courtroom. "Mr. Bieber, were you present at Mr. Combs's Miami residence on the night of June 9, 2012? Rodriguez asked. Bieber's knuckles whitened as he gripped the edge of the witness stand. "Yes." "And can you tell the court who else was present?" "Diddy was there. Several executives from the label. Some artists I recognized but didn't know personally, and—" He paused, taking another sip of water. "3 young artists who had just been signed. They couldn't have been more than 17 or 18. What happened that night?" Diddy allegedly gathered everyone in the main room. He was talking about loyalty, about family, about how the industry works. He had this book, this ledger. He called it his insurance policy. He supposedly showed pages of it to people individually, never the whole thing to anyone. Rodriguez approached with another exhibit, a photograph. "Is this the ledger you're referring to?" Bieber studied the image briefly. "Yes, that appears to be it. Your Honor, I'd like to enter Exhibit 97C, a photograph recovered from a cloud storage account registered to one of Mr. Combs's assistants." The photograph showed a black leather-bound book with gold embossing. It was partially open, though the contents were not visible. "Mr. Bieber, did Mr. Combs show you any pages from this ledger?" "Yes." "What did you see?" "Names, dates, amounts, photos. Some were paperclipped to the pages," Bieber said, his voice now barely above a whisper. "He allegedly told me that everyone who was anyone in the industry had pages in that book, that it was how he protected his investments." A wave of whispers swept through the courtroom. In the third row, a well-known music executive stood abruptly and exited, his face ashen. "Your Honor!" A voice boomed from the defense table. Diddy's lead attorney, Harrison Wells, was on his feet. "This is preposterous. These allegations are not only unfounded but amount to character assassination. We move for an immediate dismissal of this testimony." Judge Hoffman leaned forward. "Counselor, you'll have your opportunity for cross-examination. Motion denied. Please continue, Ms. Rodriguez." Rodriguez nodded her thanks to the judge before turning back to Bieber. "Did Mr. Combs ever explain what he meant by protecting his investments?" "He supposedly said that people are unpredictable unless you have something on them. He allegedly called it mutually assured destruction," Bieber replied. "He said, and I remember this clearly, nobody becomes somebody in this town without leaving something behind." At this point, the courtroom erupted. Several people began speaking at once. A member of Diddy's entourage shouted, "Lies!" before being warned by court security. Judge Hoffman banged her gavel repeatedly. "Order! I will have order in this court or I will clear the room," she warned. When calm was restored, Rodriguez continued, "Mr. Bieber, what happened after Mr. Combs showed you this ledger? He allegedly told me it was my turn to leave something behind, that if I wanted to continue at the level I had reached, I needed to commit to the family. Those were supposedly his exact words. And did you?" For the first time since taking the stand, Bieber looked directly at Diddy, who sat stone-faced at the defense table. Their eyes locked for a brief moment before Bieber turned back to Rodriguez. "No, I left. I made excuses about being sick and I left. 2 days later, rumors started appearing online about me. Private information that only a few people knew. My manager at the time told me I had made a career-limiting move by leaving the party." Rodriguez nodded slowly. "What happened to your career after that night?" "I hit turbulence," Bieber said with a wan smile. "Suddenly there were problems with my tour schedule. Collaborations fell through. I started acting out, making bad decisions. I was angry and confused." "Did you ever confront Mr. Combs about these issues?" "Once, about 6 months later at an awards show. He just smiled and said, 'Nobody gets away clean, Justin. Remember that.' Then he hugged me like nothing was wrong. Cameras were everywhere. The photo of us was in magazines the next day." The testimony continued, with Bieber detailing what he described as years of subtle industry manipulation, alleged threats veiled as advice, and what he perceived as coordinated media attacks whenever he tried to distance himself from certain industry figures. "Mr. Bieber," Rodriguez said, approaching the end of her questioning, "you've achieved enormous success despite these alleged obstacles. Why come forward now?" Bieber was silent for a moment. The courtroom waited. "Because of what I saw happen to others who didn't get away," he finally said. "Because I have a platform and security that newer artists don't have, and because I can't watch another generation go through what I did." Rodriguez nodded. "Your Honor, I have no further questions at this time." Judge Hoffman turned to the defense table. "Mr. Wells, your witness." Harrison Wells, Diddy's attorney, approached the stand with confident strides. His reputation for dismantling witness testimony preceded him. "Mr. Bieber," he began, his voice surprisingly gentle, "you've shared quite a story today. One might even call it fantastical." "Objection," Rodriguez called, characterizing the testimony. "Sustained," Judge Hoffman ruled. Wells adjusted smoothly. "Mr. Bieber, in the years since this alleged incident in Miami, you've had numerous public interactions with my client. Is that correct?" "Yes." "Social media posts praising him?" "Yes." "Joint appearances at charity events?" "Yes." "A collaborative production credit as recently as 2019? "Yes, but—" "In fact," Wells continued, cutting him off, "you've publicly credited my client with being a positive influence on your career on at least 17 documented occasions. Isn't that true?" "Under certain circumstances, yes." Wells raised an eyebrow. "Certain circumstances? Were you lying then, or are you lying now?" "Objection." Rodriguez was on her feet. Argumentative. "Sustained," Judge Hoffman agreed. Wells barely missed a beat. "Let me rephrase. Mr. Bieber, can you explain the discrepancy between your public statements about my client and your testimony today?" Bieber leaned forward into the microphone. "Because that's how the system allegedly works. You play along in public, you say the right things, you show up at the right events, you post the right photos with the right captions. Meanwhile, you try to distance yourself in private. You try to build enough independent power that they can't touch you anymore." Wells approached the witness stand, stopping just short of the permitted distance. "And when did you decide you had enough independent power to fabricate these allegations?" "Objection," Rodriguez shouted. "Withdrawn," Wells said smoothly. "No further question about that. Mr. Bieber, are you aware that my client has never been charged with any crime related to your allegations?" "I am." "Are you aware that multiple investigations by various agencies have found no evidence of systematic impropriety in the entertainment businesses with which my client is associated?" "I am aware of the official findings, yes." Something in Bieber's tone caused Wells to pause briefly. "Are you suggesting those investigations were compromised in some way?" Bieber looked directly at the jury for the first time. "I'm suggesting that when powerful people allegedly have damaging information on other powerful people, investigations tend to hit walls." The gallery erupted once more. A well-known actress in the back row stood up and applauded before being admonished by court security. Judge Hoffman's gavel came down hard. "Mr. Bieber," Wells continued when order was restored, "you've had your own legal troubles over the years. Reckless driving, vandalism, public intoxication. Is it possible that this testimony is an attempt to redirect public attention from your own misdeeds to someone else?" "Objection," Rodriguez called. "Relevance." "I'll allow it," Judge Hoffman ruled. "The witness may answer." Bieber's expression hardened slightly. "My past mistakes are well documented. I've taken responsibility for them. This isn't about me trying to improve my image. This is about allegedly systematic manipulation of young artists." Wells nodded as if considering this. "You mentioned a ledger earlier. In the 10 years since you allegedly saw this item, did you ever report it to authorities?" "No." "Did you ever mention it to your management team?" "Parts of my team were allegedly compromised." "That wasn't my question, Mr. Bieber. Did you ever report this supposedly damaging ledger to anyone in an official capacity?" "No." "So we have no evidence of this ledger's existence beyond your word?" "And the photograph that was just entered into evidence," Bieber countered. Wells smiled thinly. "A photograph of a book, with no visible contents. That could be any book." He returned to the defense table and consulted briefly with Diddy, who whispered something while never taking his eyes off Bieber. "Mr. Bieber," Wells continued, turning back to the witness, "would you say your career has stalled in recent years?" "I wouldn't characterize it that way, no. Your last album underperformed compared to previous releases, did it not?" Sales metrics have changed with streaming. Raw numbers don't tell the whole story. But the critical reception was mixed at best. Some reviews were positive, others less so. That's subjective. Wells nodded as if Bieber had made his point for him. Subjective. Much like your testimony today. He walked back toward the defense table. No further questions, Your Honor. Judge Hoffman looked to Rodriguez. Redirect. Rodriguez approached the stand once more. Just one question, Mr. Bieber. You mentioned that you left the industry party rather than comply with Mr. Combs's alleged request to leave something behind. What did you understand that request to mean? Before Bieber could answer, Wells was on his feet. Objection. Calls for speculation. Your Honor, the witness has testified about his understanding of events he personally experienced. Rodriguez countered. I'll allow it, Judge Hoffman ruled. The witness may answer. Bieber took a deep breath. Based on conversations earlier that evening, and the allegedly fearful expressions I saw on the faces of the younger artists, I understood that I was being asked to participate in activities that would be recorded and added to the ledger. Activities that would compromise me. That could be used against me if I ever spoke out. What kind of activities? Rodriguez pressed. Allegedly illegal ones, Bieber said simply. Acts that would make sure I could never come forward without destroying myself in the process. The courtroom fell completely silent. Even the reporters had stopped typing, all eyes fixed on the witness stand. And you walked away, Rodriguez stated. I tried to. But I've spent the last decade looking over my shoulder, wondering when something would be fabricated if they couldn't get something real. Wondering which of my actual mistakes were my own, and which were encouraged. Rodriguez nodded. Thank you, Mr. Bieber. No further questions. As Bieber stood to leave the witness stand, a commotion erupted at the back of the courtroom. The double doors burst open, and Usher Raymond IV strode confidently down the center aisle. The R&B star, who had helped mentor Bieber early in his career, was immediately recognized by everyone present. Your Honor, Usher's attorney announced from beside him, my client has relevant testimony and would like to be added to the witness list. Diddy, who had remained stoic throughout Bieber's testimony, visibly paled. He grabbed Wells by the arm and began whispering urgently. Judge Hoffman checked her watch. We'll take a 30-minute recess to address this request. Court is adjourned until 2:30. As the gavel came down, the courtroom erupted into chaos. Journalists raced for the doors, already dictating breaking news updates into their phones. Bieber was quickly escorted out through a side entrance by his security team. Diddy remained at the defense table, huddled with his legal team, occasionally glancing toward Usher, who stood calmly at the back of the emptying courtroom. In the midst of the commotion, a court officer approached Judge Hoffman and handed her a sealed envelope. She opened it, read the contents, and her expression changed from professional neutrality to concern. She summoned the bailiff and whispered instructions. The bailiff nodded and immediately moved toward the main doors, speaking into his radio. Outside the courthouse, news vans had already begun setting up for live broadcasts. Social media was exploding with partial accounts of the testimony. Within minutes, the hashtag #NAR Bieber vs. Diddy was trending globally. As reporters shouted questions at anyone exiting the building, a black SUV with tinted windows pulled up to the curb. The back door opened briefly, revealing the unmistakable silhouette of another major recording artist whose relationship with Diddy had been the subject of industry whispers for years. The door closed quickly, but not before several photographers captured the moment. The story that had been simmering for decades in the shadows of the entertainment industry was finally boiling over into the public eye. And if Bieber's testimony was just the beginning, what would follow promised to reshape the power structure of an entire industry built on image, influence, and allegedly intimidation. Back inside the emptying courtroom, one journalist remained, frantically taking notes. She had been investigating rumors about the alleged ledger for years, hitting dead end after dead end as sources backed out at the last minute or denied ever speaking with her. Now, watching Usher conferring with his attorney in hushed tones while court officers maintained a protective perimeter around them, she knew that the fortress of silence was finally beginning to crumble, and the world would never look at the glittering facade of the entertainment industry quite the same way again.